Well, not quite the storybook ending, huh? Not for us, anyway. But you men played like champions. You never gave up. And champions hold their heads high. What you achieved goes way beyond the win-loss column or what's going to be written on the front page of the sports section tomorrow. You've achieved something that some people spend their whole lives trying to find. What you achieved is that ever-elusive victory within. And gentlemen, I am so proud of you.
Oh, one of my favorite movie moments, Coach Carter talking about his championship coming up short with his team that he rebuilt from the ashes. And I know that that was a sound that I thought was very reminiscent of the Indiana Pacers season. Everything came to a crashing end with Tyrese Halliburton. And today we're jumping on the pod to talk about some very interesting news that came out earlier this afternoon. And Shams Charania tweeted that Myles Turner has accepted an offer from the Milwaukee Bucks, and it is a 4-year, $107 million contract with probably our biggest rivals in the league. And so a lot obviously going on X, and over the last couple of days, it has been a whirlwind. It seemed to be something that was brewing as time goes on yesterday. And I started to think about what different things might have meant over the last couple of weeks. And of course, I think it all comes to a head when Tyrese Halliburton goes down with the Achilles injury. And because that is an injury that most of us would expect to be a season-ending injury, I think that it's, when you look at Myles' tenure here as a Pacer, he's dealt with a lot of guys going down with injuries, leaving the team. And Myles has always been sort of that stable force that we've always had. Whether you've always liked Myles Turner as a player, you had back and forth moments with Myles Turner as a player, whatever that might be. I think we can all appreciate the human that was Myles Turner and just what he means to this franchise, this city. And again, I can't help but think back to his Player Tribune article that he wrote. I think this was during the NBA Finals, and talking about his time as a Pacer and what it has all meant to him to be in this city, to be drafted by this franchise, to have this career where it felt like he was going to be an Indiana Pacer for life. And it just so happens that today we're moving on from a player that's been here for 10 years. And it's, I think some fans are torn over it. Some fans are not happy with necessarily the front office or the player himself or, the situations at hand. And I think that everybody's fair in what they think, what they believe. I think that that is the right as a fan to have. I think that when you put, your energy into being a fan of a sports team and you invest in this team, you invest time, you invest years, money in this team, I think that your opinion matters just as much as those that play on the floor, those that coach, those that cover the team. And again, like I said, I think it's all come to a head here with Myles. And for a player that for 10 years has always been said that he doesn't really fit in the NBA, they don't know how long his career could be in the NBA, a player that's been doubted quite a bit. And even from internally, I mean, you go back to times where Myles Turner was in trade talks around the deadline over the first handful of years that he was in Indiana and beyond. And then you go into where I think it was 2022 when DeAndre Ayton became available. and the Pacers offer a max offer to him, and Phoenix matches that. So Myles ends up staying in Indiana because I believe that would have come with a sign and trade deal. He would have been on his way out when the Pacers were going hard after DeAndre Ayton. And it, you could look at that situation and talk about the fact that that probably rattled Myles quite a bit. And he talked about just, there's been so many moments of doubt from himself mentally, from people around him, his close circle, his people that he believed were fans of the Pacers that turned on him. And there are some crazy things that people say to these guys, and I understand that you might not necessarily be in total favor of the way that the guy plays on the court, but at the end of the day, he is one of the nicest humans, one of the best people that this Pacers organization has ever had. And so, we all wish Myles the best in Milwaukee, obviously not when they're playing the Pacers, and hopefully, hopefully Giannis leaves Milwaukee and Myles can maybe not reign over us for a little bit. But it sounds like Giannis is the one that recruited Myles Turner to Milwaukee. I think Giannis and the rest of the league understood just how, I guess, not how little the Pacers appreciated Myles Turner, but I think it definitely is worth mentioning that Myles never really had the total confidence of anybody in the Pacers organization, maybe besides Rick Carlisle and some of his teammates. I think that there's always been this question mark around Myles Turner. And again, I understand the criticism where it comes from. I understand because he's oftentimes compared to different bigs in this league that have made an impact in different ways that Myles didn't quite make. But you also have to remember that Myles leads the Pacers franchise history in blocks over Jermaine O'Neal. He surpassed Jermaine's previous franchise record at 1,245 blocks last season. Now has 1,412 blocks, and did that all as a Pacer. I remember when he came into the NBA and Myles was oftentimes criticized for the way he ran, the way that he jumped. He had a weird gait. Like he just, it was like watching a giraffe try to run at times. And he was very slender. They worried about maybe his weight as far as, I remember there were moments where like he'd go on this, fast where he'd lose a ton of weight. He did yoga for a while. He got flexible because they said he wasn't as flex. I mean, Myles transformed so many different times from season to season, and his role transformed so many times. He was in so many trade rumors, and it never once really, I mean, he did say obviously it impacted him mentally, but on the court, I never really felt like Myles went through those stretches where you looked at him and went, what we're saying and what the criticism is saying is getting to Myles. It was more of like, why isn't Myles doing more? But when you dig down deep and you understand how well he, especially throughout the first, 7, 8, 9 years, I do think he did start to lose more. I think if you go back and watch film from this season, it did look like he had lost a little bit of a step. And he's getting older, so that's understandable. I think a 10-year vet, that big 7-footer, putting that much weight and having played throughout college, high school, so much is going to be put on those knees, those ankles. And I do think you're starting to see a little bit of his decline. But at 29, people are like, well, he's still young. But I think if you're a fan base that's watched him all season, I will say there were moments this year where I felt he wasn't quite as explosive, getting to the ball around the rim, protecting the rim he had he was, I think, third in the league in blocks. But I felt like he was always somebody that could finish first in the league in blocks. But I started to notice it more so towards the end of the season where I think he might have been dealing with leg issues. I know that he had multiple games where he turned an ankle. There were moments in the playoffs too that weren't really discussed where he kind of turned an ankle went back to the locker room a couple times, and then he started dealing with that illness in the NBA Finals. So I don't know what all happened in the postseason and towards the end of the season with Myles, but it did seem like he started to lose steam. And if you look at it, I mean, I where I understand the criticism coming in is he was not good against the Knicks. He was not good against Oklahoma City. I understand that Karl Anthony Towns has always been a difficult matchup for him, but I think you started to see a little bit of his abilities exposed by the Thunder and by the Knicks as well. And I think that they were able to gain advantages in certain areas where Myles' weaknesses were put under a microscope and they were exploited. And I think that, no player is perfect. Obviously, every person on that Pacers team has some kind of weakness, but I think because of his offensive struggles, everything else became more glaring. And then you start to think about the reporting that came out that the Pacers were looking into going into the luxury tax. And that's something we'll get into later on in this episode as well. But the Pacers, the reporting was that they were interested in getting into the luxury tax for the first time since, I believe, the year 2000, right around when Austin Crozier had, I don't know why I said it like that, Crozier. I got like cottonmouth. But yeah, Austin was the player that forced them, I think, ultimately into that luxury tax the last time they were in it, and it was the only time that they've been in it. And that didn't go as well after a really good performance in the NBA Finals the year prior. I think you look at the Pacers ownership, and they've always been a hesitant group to get into the luxury tax, and I'm not going to tell somebody how to spend their money. If that's how they want to spend their money, then fine by me. But the thing about the Pacers, I think it's almost like the fan base is, I wouldn't say ignored this, but kind of have forgotten this along the way. I think because the luxury tax stuff started to come up more and more as time went on throughout this postseason. And we finally feel like we've got a point guard that wants to be here, an all-star, a superstar that wants to be here for the rest of his career, and Tyrese Halliburton. We have that savvy veteran that is an NBA champion in Pascal Siakam. And then you've got great role players that we all like. I mean, they're all fan favorites. You go up and down that list, you can find really big fans of all those players up and down. And that's another thing that we'll talk about as to why I think this decision was ultimately made. But you look at the Myles Turner situation and you thought, all right, we're finally going to get into the luxury tax. We're going to keep this team together and run it back again. But once you do that, that starts the clock. It's a 3-year repeater tax. So if you're in the luxury, if you're in the aprons for 3 years straight or 3 years out of 4, you are taxed double than what you'd been taxed normally once you hit the apron. So you are taxed twice as much if you are a repeat offender in the luxury tax. So once you go into that luxury tax, that clock starts then, and you've got 3 years to try to win a championship before you really almost have to blow it up, because the way that the aprons work, it just doesn't allow you any kind of wiggle room to sign players. You can start to get into this Boston situation where you're in the second apron and you're trying to shed as much as possible. And now the Celtics, I mean, you're looking at a team that, they might look at trading Jaylen Brown, and all of a sudden you're looking at when Jason Tatum comes back, that's the only player that's left of that regime. That was going to be the same way with the Pacers. Once you start down that trail, once you start to get into that second apron, you will eventually, it's inevitable, you will eventually have to make extremely difficult decisions. And those decisions are even tougher when you're not making an NBA Finals run or winning a championship. So I think people, you get so stuck in a vacuum of thinking about the right now and the emotions of right now. And I think people, and this is a good thing, the way that they've built this roster, this is great for Pacers fans. We have this hope, right? That, yeah, like we don't have Tyrese, but next year, I mean, we could get Andrew Nembhard to blossom. Benedict Mathurin can become what he was supposed to become. You've got Jarris Walker who can grow. You'll have moments where maybe a Cam Jones can grow. And then we've got all the other pieces left over from the championship run. So we can still be a really competitive team in the Eastern Conference. I'm not saying we can make it to the Eastern Conference Finals or the finals, but we can be competitive, and that's fun to watch. But when you boil it down and you really think about what this team is going to look like next year, and I know there's a lot of question marks because we've never seen Andrew Nembhard run a team at the point guard position. We've never seen Bennedict Mathurin really step into this role of like, it's you, dude. Like, you got to have some scoring. Like this year, I think at the beginning of the season, you saw, flashes of that. But then with that, you also saw a defense that really struggled. And that's what kept them at a 10-15 when Mathurin had to start and Neesmith's out. So we're in this weird spot with Ben. You're eventually going to have to pay Aaron Neesmith. You're eventually going to have to decide what you do with Pascal Siakam, who will be 33 when Tyrese Halliburton returns to form. All these things start to snowball. And so the Pacers front office is looking at this as do we try to win with this team now and go into the luxury tax? Because once we do that, we're likely not coming back out of that. Because think about it. If we go into it this year with Myles Turner, because as soon as you sign Myles Turner, you win it. You're going right into the luxury tax because you have to fill out the roster. So you're going to be pretty well into the first apron of the luxury tax. Once that happens, you start the clock. So now you've got next year without Tyrese Halliburton, the following year without a healthy Tyrese Halliburton for the most part, like he's going to be getting back into form. So then you're wasting 2 years of luxury, right? Just to try to compete with the remnants of a championship team why, if you're not the front office, aren't you deciding, hey, you know what? We probably are going to be more competitive if we use that money when Tyrese is back and healthy. I do believe, I 100% believe that this franchise and the Simons, Steve Simon and this front office will spend the money when it is time. I just think it's so unfortunate that this happens. And now they look like the franchise as it had existed in years past, where we're kind of hesitant to spend money and go into that tax. I think they believe in Tyrese Halliburton. I think they believe in their Hall of Fame coach and Rick Carlisle. I think they understand that Pascal Siakam's time is going to be very limited once Tyrese comes back. So they're making that decision to not try to shoot for it now, because ultimately all you're doing by going into luxury tax is just saying, all right, we're riding or dying without Tyrese Halliburton, and we're hoping he comes back, and then we're just going to run it back with this same team again. Like, how many more times can you run this same team back and not try to make improvements? Because that's eventually the spot where you were going to get with this team. Even with Myles Turner or without Myles Turner, they're going to have to make decisions on, do you sign Aaron Neesmith back, right? Do you give him an extension? Because a lot of people think he's a $20+ million player. That's a lot of money that they're going to have to throw at Aaron. I mean, it's going to be a good deal, but that's still a lot of money that's going to go towards that tax too. Then you're going to have to think about, all right, well, all of these things are happening. Tyrese Halliburton's eventually going to want more money too. So like, all these things start to snowball. Andrew Nembhard, like, you start to think down the road 3 or 4 years when these guys are off these extensions that they signed last year. It's like, all right, now what do you do? Like Obi Toppin, like, what do you do with his money? And what do you do with his contract? And then you're going to have to consolidate them at some point, because you can't feed all of these mouths. So then, like, who do you trade? Where do you go? Like, there were so many questions coming up that the Pacers were not really going to have to face if Tyrese Halliburton is back and he's not hurt. But I think the more you look into this, and I know it's hard to remove emotions, I know it's hard to think about, like, I love Myles Turner to death. I was always his biggest fan, as far as whatever he lacked on the offensive end sometimes, and the rebounding, he made up with by just deterring people from getting anywhere near the rim, by getting people out of the paint, because his presence just causes you to be on high alert when you're trying to score the basketball in the paint. So I've always been a huge fan of Myles. Did I get frustrated with him sometimes? Absolutely. But every role player I get frustrated with. I get frustrated with Obi Toppin. I get frustrated with TJ McConnell. I get frustrated with Shepard. I mean, you could kind of throw Nembhard, Neesmith in that same category. We get frustrated with all of our players. Everybody's got these flaws, and I think people thought, for some reason, I think because Myles was, I think what happened was, because I think he's an 11th pick, right? People go, okay, he's an 11th pick. That's a pretty high pick for the Pacers, because they don't really tank, and they want this guy to be a Jermaine O'Neal, right? Because he kind of has some game that reminds you a little bit of Jermaine, his defensive abilities. So I think people started to categorize him with Jermaine, and they're not the same. They're just not. Stylistically, they're just not the same players. Jermaine was very much a back to the basket. He liked that elbow shot some, but he was a back to the basket, post you up, get mean, get physical, and score with his craftiness. That's not Myles Turner. It never was Myles Turner. And I think people wanted him to be that. But in this NBA, especially the way it's going forward, I never understood that. I, I'm hesitant for them to go sign DeAndre Ayton because DeAndre Ayton's like old school big. And I understand he can step out some, but like he's not, you're going to be more frustrated with DeAndre Ayton than you were ever frustrated with Myles Turner. So there's that aspect. And listening to podcasts today, I think people did a good job of encapsulating how everybody's feeling, right? I've listened to multiple from 1070 The Fan with JMV and them. I listened to Tony East. I've watched what people were saying on X between Boyd and Bowen and them, and then talking or looking at what Alex Golden and Facci had said about it. And everybody's accurate. Everybody's spot on. I get everybody's point. That's what makes this so difficult as we try to break it down, because everybody I thought they were right. like I was listening to JMV before I jumped on here, and he was talking about the fact that this team isn't going to be better. This team's going to be worse. They're worse without Myles Turner, which is 100% true. They are worse without Myles Turner because now the best option you have is DeAndre Ayton if you're wanting to spend that much money, and if he's wanting to sign for the mid-level exception at $14 million or whatever they have left. Is he going to want to sign for that? I don't know. Like, who knows? And then you hear all these things coming out from Portland that he never really was, his heart was never in an import. Like, you don't want that. Like, that's not what this team's built. And then JMV made a really great point that I thought, a lot of us understand as Pacer fans. If you're listening to this outside of Pacer Kingdom, if you're a Bucks fan listening to this, you're getting a great character in Myles Turner. He's a great person, wonderful human being. We'll miss him a lot here in Indiana. I think the biggest thing, though, is that he's a solid player. He just is. Like, he's solid. I know he didn't play well in the finals. I know that he struggles against the Knicks. But, again, every team has that, and the Pacers were in that. And, I think he understood that the matchups just don't – sometimes they just don't fall into your favor. Those matchups were better for Obi Toppin and Pascal Siakam. I would say the matchups against Cleveland, Myles Turner is more effective because he can get in there and swat some of those baskets that Jared Allen, or cause more problems for Donovan Mitchell around the rim. Like, Myles was part of the reason they win that Cleveland series. So there's just so many things, right? It's people want to put Myles in the star cat. He's not a star. He's a role player. I mean, he's a great role player, one of the best role players that you could have, and one of the most selfless human beings that I think could ever grace or don a Pacers uniform. Because, I mean, think about it. Think about if your boss and people outside of your workplaces and even your teammates were like, "We ever going to get rid of this dude? Like, this dude can we get rid of him? He's soft, man. He's not mentally there. He's not focused. His heart's not in it. He's not what we want him to be." Like, could you imagine if somebody was doing that to you all the time in your workplace for 10 years? You'd be like, "Get me out of here." So there might be some of that aspect of Myles Turner's decision. Like, I totally wouldn't blame him if it comes out that he's like, "Man, I'm not gonna lie, I got a little annoyed with some of the way that the Pacers fans had treated me," because not all of us did, right? Not all of us is mentioned. Like, people are mentioning him today, and like, thank God he's gone and all this stuff. You're really gonna look back, I think, at that and regret it. I just feel like he is so undervalued for everything that he ever brought to this organization. You just think about the community impact that he had. Turner's block that's going to be so sad. Like, they're going to try to replace that with something else, but gosh, this guy's been the staple. I mean, I thought he would retire an Indiana Pacer, but here we are 10 years in. Myles Turner doesn't make it. Let's get into more of the meat and potatoes of it. We can keep reflecting on his time here, but I want to get into some of these talking points. So just looking at Myles over his 10-year career and what he did last year, 29-year-old Myles Turner averaged 15.6 points per game this season on 48.1% shooting, including a career best 39.6 from three-point land, making a career high 156 three-pointers. He also averaged 6.5 rebounds and 2 blocks per game, finishing third in the NBA with 144 blocks behind Victor Wembanyama and Brook Lopez. Again, like I mentioned, he had passed Jermaine O'Neal's record this year at 1,245 blocks. He has 1,412 blocks, and that is what it will end with as an Indiana Pacer. Turner struggled in the NBA Finals, averaged just 10.6 points per game on 37.7% shooting, including 21.4% from three-point range, to go with just 4.4 rebounds and 1.4 blocks per game. He did have a really good first round and second round. Averaged in the Eastern Conference semifinals against the Cavs, averaged around 13.8 points per game on 48.4% shooting, including 34.4% three-point shooting for the playoffs. And again, he just a really solid production from your center, somebody that, that's the other thing too, is we talked about this, right? Leading up into what were your options besides Myles Turner, the people that are saying get rid of Myles, what were your other options? Well, well, now, I don't think Brook Lopez has signed anywhere yet. I just DeAndre Ayton, and then it's just a collection of who's who. And so what do you do? I mean, next year, I wouldn't be shocked, right? As it currently sits, would not be shocked if it's Thomas Bryant, Isaiah Jackson in the starting five. So is that something you wanted, right? Isaiah Jackson isn't going to stretch the floor. He's going to be in that dunker spot. And what do you do with that, right? He's a great bench option because defensively he's very sound and he's a great rebounder. He's very athletic and he'll get you some points. He's great with that second unit because they like to just run. But when you've got Nembhard, and I think the offense looks a lot different next year because I think they kind of transform it to fit the strengths of Andrew Nembhard more. So now you've got, Tony Bradley signed. So right now you just got Tony Bradley as center depth, and now you're going to have to go spend $2 million here, $2 million there, and hope that maybe you can land a mid-level exception at $14 million. That the players at $14 million that you're going to be able to get, or it's going to be appalling. I think the Pacer fans, I think the people that were the Turner out group, I think they're going to be shocked by just the value that you can bring in at 14.5. I think I can go play for 14.5. Yeah, it'll be fascinating. But the Pacers, like everybody mentioned, they're worse without Myles Turner. They were going to be going into the luxury tax. Did you want to spend the luxury and get taxed that amount without Tyrese Halliburton healthy for like a year and a half before he gets back into form? Did you want to go into the luxury tax? Do you pay Benedict Mathurin next year? Because if you do that, you're going further in. If you pay Benedict Mathurin the money that he's going to want to be owed next year, then you can say goodbye to a lot of other guys. It's how it's going to be. Like the Pacers, they won't go near that second apron. Like it's like a landmine. It is. Unless you are 100% sold that is the year, I think any owner or team that goes into that aren't filthy rich and can bounce back quick, I think it is a disaster. I mean, look what it's done to the Celtics, right? So again, it's a matter of like picture it's like the Simons and Kevin Pritchard and them sitting over a red button on hit the timer, start it now. That's what the luxury tax ends up being, because it just snowballs. You're going to have to sign players as you continue to go. If the Pacers don't do well next year and they're in the luxury tax, even with Tyrese healthy, they would have gone, okay, need to upgrade. Let's move some pieces. But we got to be careful, because when you move for better players, here comes more money. So this whole thing of people like the Simons are cheap. Kevin Pritchard doesn't want to, he doesn't want to spend the money, blah, blah, blah. The Simons don't want to spend money. They don't want to get in a luxury tax. It doesn't make sense right now. It just doesn't. It doesn't make sense, because they're going to go in the luxury tax. It's going to start the clock. And then now you got to decide, well, I can't really afford to extend Benedict Mathurin. So at the end of the season, do we trade him before the trade deadline? Do we wait? And if he had a great year, like, do we extend him and then hope that he turns into the player that, like, so many questions. Now, Turner gone, you can decide. You have time now to decide on Benedict Mathurin. Like, do you want to throw him the contract money that you were going to throw at Myles? If Benedict Mathurin becomes a star, he quickly will retain all that money that Myles would have been paid. Like, so it just it's fun to look at these things, because I think so many people look at it into a vacuum of like, it's got to be now. You got to get in the luxury tax. You got to keep these pieces together. Well, I mean, Myles Turner, what? It's going to be going on probably 32 when Tyrese gets back. Pascal going on to 33. Like, they probably have 2 years left, maybe, before they start to really tail. And now you've got a huge contract with Turner, got a huge contract with Siakam, and you're like, oh, we don't want to pay them. So now they're both going to walk, because they probably were going to go 3-3. Like, those contracts were going to run out together. So then now you got two huge holes that you're going to have to fill. It just, I honestly, it is a tough decision. I wouldn't have want to made it. I'm not the one that wants to make that, to say our 10-year guy, the guy we love, the guy that we were even talking to about extending and becoming pretty much a Pacer for life. Now, in a flash, we have to now completely tear this thing down. And, maybe not completely, that was an exaggeration, but you know what I mean? Like, tear it down to where, like, this is a reset. This is a reset big time, because now you've got Myles' place to replace. Whether that happens this year, we don't know. Obviously, we don't know what's going on in the front office, what's being discussed, who's out there that would even be interesting, right? And then you also have to think about, like, now if we make a move, it's going to be through trade, because there's not really anything available in the free agent market. And because the Pacers don't really have big contracts to trade, you're going to have to package up guys to then get one player in return, right? So it becomes very difficult to get somebody in. But it's also difficult if you would have thrown $27 million at Myles Turner, $30 million at Myles Turner, whatever that number had to be for him not to go to Milwaukee. It would have been just as difficult, if not more difficult, to try to bring in pieces to help Tyrese Haliburton once he returns. So again, it's a game of chess. It's a game of guessing at some point. Like, it's a game of, like, do we do it now, or do we try to figure out where we're going in a year and who can we package in a year? Because I'm not sure that that's what's really going to hurt Pacer fans, is that I don't believe that the answer to this problem is solved in the next year. I think it's next year and beyond, or maybe even it starts at the trade deadline, where you start to shed even more, so you can bring back more, that you can invest in the future. Because let's be honest, we're not building this team any longer around Pascal Siakam. We're not building this team around Myles Turner, not that you would. This team is being built around Tyrese Haliburton, and Tyrese Haliburton's not available next season. You're building around your guy, and you want to spend as much money as you can to help that guy. And this year, you can't help that guy. So that's where it becomes so difficult. And people are like, well, just go into the second apron. Well, once you do that, it's got to happen instantly, or it will completely fall apart, like we've seen in Boston. So I don't think we think about these things sometimes into not just next year and not just the year after that, but, like, think about Tyrese Haliburton the second, like, when Tyrese Haliburton comes back, it'll probably be 26, 27. That season, he will still be getting his form back. It's not 27 until 27, 28. That's when you want to surround Tyrese Haliburton with pieces, but you're not going to be able to do that if Myles Turner and Pascal Siakam are sitting on all that money. And now you're kind of handcuffed, and you've had to probably trade pieces away because you can't retain Aaron Nesmith. You're now relying on Benedict Mathurin to become exactly what you want him to become. There's so many moving pieces where now what the Pacers are going to do are, and they didn't do, this is another thing I agreed with a lot of people, they didn't necessarily do the best job of retaining assets. Like, could you have maybe sign and trade? I know the Bucks don't have much to really sign and trade for, but, like, could you have packaged him somewhere else? Like, could you have retained some assets? Probably. But I don't think that, another thing too we haven't really discussed is, I'm not really sure the Pacers saw this one coming. In fact, I would guarantee you they didn't see the Bucks coming because it's mind-boggling that the rival would come after your franchise, the guy that's been with your franchise for 10 years, not your franchise player, but the guy that's been with you for so long. It's like, man, that's gutsy, because if you're able to pull it off, I mean, that's a big Darth Vader move, and he did it. And now Turner, I'm sure we'll hear from some of the fans. I hope that when he returns for the first time, that we give him the appreciation he deserves, because he does. But it's a weird situation, because I can see where Myles Turner is coming from. He looks around the market. Hartenstein and them are getting around 30 mil. Naz Reid, Jaren Jackson Jr. is getting a good payday. So you're looking at all these guys going, all right, I'm in there. I'm there in that category. Where's my money? Don't blame the guy. I really don't. He's the best player available in free agency. He's going to get paid. So yeah, and there were reports out there today that the Pacers did go well north of 20 mil, but maybe maybe with Myles, he thought the Pacers need to give me 30 more. Like, other teams can get me away for 28, 27, but like, I want the Pacers, because I've given so much to them. I kind of want to make that money where, because I've been loyal, because all these things, these bonuses, like, you don't know what really happened with the player. You don't know if the finals run had a lot to do with, like, they yanked Myles off in the fourth quarter and never put him back in the fourth. It just, you wonder how much of this stuff goes around in his head. And he's a very connected person with his emotions. He feels, you can tell. He's not one of these stone cold, he is a guy that wears his emotions. He feels what he's feeling. He can get down on himself. You've seen him get down on himself. You've seen him rise above occasions. You've seen him challenge himself. So he's gone through all of these things with the Pacers, and you wonder how much of that just wore on him. And that's why he ultimately feels slighted. Like, I could see where he feels slighted. I could see where he feels that he has a better chance of being appreciated. And for a guy that's been with the team for 10 years, when people are throwing more money at you from other teams, and he's probably got all sorts of teams calling him, throwing him money, and he feels appreciated, and maybe he feels more appreciated than he's ever felt. And I don't know, you never know with a guy. But again, like I said, I've always loved Myles. I've always thought he's done exactly what they've wanted him to do. It's now a tough spot, and it was going to be a tough spot. The Tyrese Halliburton, I think it's been one thing after the next with these players and this organization and these fans. I feel like we've gone through the absolute ringer in the last week and a half. Like, we've gotten our souls taken out and stomped on. It's not going to get much better next year, I don't believe. And I'm not looking forward to the redemption tour for some of these teams on the Pacers. But we'll get through it. We'll be better equipped, I think, to make our team better when Tyrese Halliburton comes back, because of what happened today. I truly believe that. The confidence I now have in this front office, it's not like the front offices with Paul George. It's not like what they tried to build with Victor Oladipo and those head coaches that were a train wreck. This feels different. I feel like KP and Chad have a good temperature of this organization's players. I feel that the team aspect, while it is something we really lean on as something that made us stronger, the continuity, we wanted to keep these guys together and see what they could do. Did they reach the mountaintop? Did they reach their full potential? Can you be better without Myles Turner? I think that's something we will not have the instant answer for. I don't think it happens next year. I don't think we go out and get somebody. I think we can't really judge this and the moves and maybe just not getting Myles back until we see how it plays out when Tyrese gets back. That's I know that's not the answer a lot of people want to hear, but I think it's the answer that we have to understand. We're not going to see or really enjoy the fruits of our labor here, or non-labor, I guess you could say, until we get to the point where Tyrese comes back. That money's now available, and you can spend it and throw it at somebody. I truly do think that now the Pacers are trying to stake out a path forward, and to do that, they're going to have to take inventory. They were going to have to do this at some point very soon because of Benedict Matherin's contract situation. Is he a sixth man? Is he a starter? We don't know. Is Aaron Nesmith a sixth man or starter? How high can Andrew Nembhard jump? How much longer does Pascal Siakam have? What can we get from some of these guys that are younger, like Jarris Walker, like Benedict Mathurin, Johnny Furphy, Cam Jones, Talon Peter, Quentin Jackson, Enrique Freeman, Isaiah Jackson, James Wiseman? I think that there is this feeling now, and I hope that Pacer fans don't get too discouraged if not big moves are not made and Isaiah Jackson is the starting five next year, or Obi Toppin's at the starting five next year. I think that this team is trying to figure out who they are and what they want to become when Tyrese Halliburton is available to them. The East got a lot better today and over the last couple of weeks. The Hawks have been on a spree, right? Detroit looks great. I think Cleveland made a good move, I thought, with Lonzo Ball. So you've got these teams getting better. And I think that's another hard part is like you're seeing these other teams look better. Every Shams update is Pistons do this, Hawks do that, Memphis did this, Denver did this, Rockets do this. Pacers, they did what? They let Myles go to their rival? It's like an avalanche right now. But I think once we're removed from it, it's going to hurt watching Myles play in Milwaukee. But if you're a Milwaukee fan out there, I'd love to know what you think of your situation. You've basically cut Damian Lillard where it's going to be $20 million for the next 5 years of how you're going to have to spread out his buyout. So it's basically like you're paying Myles Turner $48 million a year for each of the years that he's playing in Milwaukee. I can honestly, the writing's on the wall. I don't know if people are reading it. Giannis, I don't care how much he says he is loyal to the Milwaukee Bucks. That writing's on that wall. He's gone eventually. They're just not going to be able to put assets around him. Look at their future. Look at the money they're spending. Look at what they're having to put next to him. Look who they've let walk. They're not going to be able to build a contender. I truly don't believe they will. They just don't have the pieces to do it. And instead of hard reset, can you imagine the haul you could get for Giannis Antetokounmpo? If you trade Giannis, you could get, I know this is Giannis talk now, but I mean, so when people say, oh, the Pacers just let Turner's liable to end up in a team that becomes a lottery team very soon. So, there's that. Let him enjoy Milwaukee, right? Good for him. He got paid. We love Myles, but enjoy maybe the last year that Giannis spends in Milwaukee. So, going forward for the Pacers, thinking about the timing of this is another thing that came up today. It is awful timing. If you're looking at the Pacers ever wanting Brook Lopez, Clint Capella, Luke Cornett, or Kevin Looney, those were the centers that were on the market. On the market. Brook, I think, is the only free agent. I think that I can't remember. Clint, too, I believe, was the free agent. And Luke Cornett. But I think Kevin Looney was traded. I could be wrong on that one. But anyway, those aren't necessary. Could you imagine if the Pacers were like, yeah, you're going to lose Myles Turner, but you're going to get Luke Cornett? I'm pretty sure everybody like, what? That's no. There's just not a good market out there. It's now left up to DeAndre Ayton. That's pretty much the answer. Or some random center. You're gonna be like, what is that? Like, why are we doing that? you're better off running James Wiseman out there and being like, dude, I just hope you stay healthy, because he did look good last year for the injury. But again, it becomes that like there's not much out there. And I love that people are like, oh, it's too late. Pacers can't even enter a good market. I'm like, they wouldn't have wanted any of those pieces anyway. So not really missing out much there. But again, DeAndre Ayton, he's going to be somebody that's being thrown around. The Pacers had signed him for 4-year, $133 million offer sheet in 2022. Suns match it, and then they traded him to Portland. I guess he's been a headache and a half to have. He's digressed tremendously. He's been a headache in that locker room, like causing problems. And so you wonder if you really want to even try that. You don't know if Portland's making that up, obviously, but still, with Chauncey Billups over there, and he says, Ayton's maybe not necessarily the best player in the locker room. That's concerning to me. That's the kind of stuff you're like, stay away from that. Honestly, I'd rather watch Isaiah Jackson shoot 7 threes for some reason than DeAndre Ayton run up and down the floor for the Pacers. I'm probably going to come back and bite myself for that one, because that's, if they do that, I'm going to be so sad. Anyway, but yeah, looking forward, team's going to be worse without Myles right now. Obviously, you lose your starting center, but you also have the capability going forward to do something to build around Tyrese Halliburton when he returns. I personally believe that if you throw Myles Turner that money, you go into the luxury tax, you're wasting a year, maybe 2, before the clock really starts to tick. So you're banking on the 3rd year, like 2027, 2028, to win you a title. I don't know if I want to make that decision right now and believe that Myles Turner is going to be what we need to get over the hump in 27, 28, or Pascal Siakam. Love the guy, but there's got to be some point where he starts to go back to being an older player. Like I know people don't want to hear it, but I think today the Pacers made the move that was not that they made it, but the Pacers today. I don't really want to say they got a break, but they definitely pushed their window back, because I think as long as Tyrese Halliburton is here, this is a team that contends for a title if you can just if you can continue to put the good pieces around him. So when Tyrese comes back, they'll be looking for somebody to fill that void that Turner has left. And they'll be doing that for the next year and a half, 2 years. They're going to be looking. Like, I would not be shocked if at the trade deadline, the Pacers make kind of an awkward move where maybe the Pacers are in the playoff hunt. Maybe the Pacers are not in the playoff hunt anymore. Maybe they're a bad team. Maybe they bank in on their 2026 draft pick. Maybe they package that up and get a big that's on a team that's not. And you're like, why are the Pacers trading for so-and-so? They're not even in contention. Well, they're looking forward to seeing Tyrese Halliburton back on the court with whoever that is they bring over. I don't know. We'll see what happens. We'll see how high that draft pick is in 2026, depending on how bad the Pacers are this year. I wouldn't say they're going to be bad. I still think that they've got some good bones. Yes, they're going to take a step back, obviously, without Tyrese and now even more so without Myles. But I could see this team being a play-in team, cusp of the playoffs kind of thing. I mean, it wouldn't floor me if they're a 7, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I wouldn't shock me. All those possible scenarios. I don't think they're the worst team in the league, obviously. It's so tough because you don't know what the future holds. This is banking on the future. This is banking on Tyrese Halliburton coming back healthy, that Pascal will have a couple of years left when he returns. And I saw a lot of that today. Like, do they consider trading Pascal? I mean, I think anything's possible at this point. I'm not saying he will get traded, but I'm thinking, what is Pascal thinking? Right? I think that's a conversation that's going to happen. What are you going through? Like, you're going to be 33 when you have another legitimate shot maybe to win a title. How you feel about that? Because you just went through this kind of thing in Toronto. He might be like, yeah, that's what I signed up for. And I could see him saying that. He's that kind of guy. But could also, I wouldn't blame him if he came out and said, you know what, maybe we look. Maybe we look. At this point, I'm all for whatever's going to make us better around Tyrese Halliburton. That's who you're building for. Who that includes, we will see. And I think you can start to throw in guys like, and that's another thing that I think is now. I wanted to say this before. I don't want to forget this point. I think it allows for you to keep guys that you probably weren't necessarily going to keep. I think Obi Toppin was somebody that they were going to really consider if they were going to consider shedding contract because he's on 14 million. Like that is a big contract compared to what else is on this Pacers roster. He's one. TJ McConnell could have been one that they considered because he's on 10 million. So that's a pretty good chunk. Benedict Mathurin, right? I think he's right around 9. I don't think they would have traded Neesmith unless Neesmith really, I mean, you could package him. I think he's around 12. I hold on. I think I've got his pulled up actually. I want to get it right. 11. Yeah, so he's 11. Nemhard's on 18. I think if you're looking at this team, somebody's calling and saying, "Okay, who's available?" I could see a point of them saying Halliburton's not available and Andrew Nemhard's not available. Other guys, we would listen. I think that's pretty realistic. So it'll be interesting to see how this team is constructed. I think you could also see a possible Obi Toppin starting 5 with, Pascal, Nemhard, Neesmith, Mathurin. I think you could see him go with, I really, honestly, do they put Jarris Walker into the 4 and Matt and Pascal to the 5? That'd be going real young, and that's a lot to put on Jarris, who doesn't really start games. So it's like, that'd be quick. I don't know if they're going to try to break up the bench unit that's been really effective with Top and McConnell. But I think all options are out there right now. I know people will ask, do you think the Pacers could trade for? I don't think so. I just don't think that there's anybody out there that the Pacers are going to. The Eastern Conference is so open, and I'm sure you keep hearing that, but it truly is. It's anybody's conference. And so you look at all the teams in the Eastern Conference, you would have to pluck centers off of bad teams. I think Nick Richards is his name in Phoenix. That's somebody that was thrown out there because they're a bad team. Like Phoenix, I don't think is going to be that good. So they're just looking to unload. And plus, I think they just got, I think it's Mark, or not Mark Williams. It's forget the guy's name from Hornets. But they just got his big, they're big from Charlotte. So they're looking to unload Richards. I will be fascinated to see how they fill out the rest of the roster, but I don't think it's going to be like, oh man, the Pacers just made a crazy move. They just traded for LeBron James. Like, it's not stuff like that. Like, I don't think that's happening. Like, I don't think so. That's usually not how the Pacers operate, by getting guys that other teams. And that's another thing. Like, are the Pacers hunting? Like that, they plucked off Neesmith. Like, is there a big out there that a team has been like, nah, we don't want him, and the Pacers are like, oh, good, we can have him. I don't know. Like, I wouldn't put it past this front office, and that's the last thing I want to mention. I've got full faith in this front office with how brilliant Chad Buchanan, Ted Wu, Kevin Pritchard, with the help of Larry Bird. I think they've just been. I've had never really a reason to doubt what they do. I don't believe they saw the Turner thing coming. I think they'd have been a little bit more like, whoa, hey, no. But things like that happen. I'd be interested. And they can't talk about it. Nobody from the Pacers can talk about it until I think it's July 6th when they start to train for summer camp for the summer league. And that's when you're going to hear probably from the Pacers front office of like, what can we expect going forward? But I think that's going to do it for today's episode. This has been fun to just kind of like group therapy. You just let it out. let it out. We'll keep you updated on anything that we might hear. I know that the holiday weekend's coming up. I wanted to get this episode out before the holiday weekend. I'm not going to lie to you. I was preparing myself to get on here either tonight or tomorrow and talk Myles Turner extension, because I really thought that everything that had been reported, it sounded like Myles was headed back to Indianapolis. But at the end of the day, Myles Turner, 4 years, $107 million for the Milwaukee Bucks. That makes them a pretty decent team. I don't think it's a team that's better than, I think the Knicks are still better than them. The Cavs are still better than them. You could make a case for Detroit and Atlanta. The Bucks are shallow. The Bucks don't have much. Like Gary Trent, Myles Turner. Like if Myles Turner, no offense to Myles, if Myles Turner is your big acquisition, I don't think that makes you really a contender. I think it just makes you a better defensive team. They'll defend. They'll be a good defensive team. But I think that they are still a few pieces away, and they don't really have room to do much with. They're going to pay Damian Lillard, even though he's not on their team and he's hurt. It's crazy. Dame, that's the other report that came out, that Dame was, what did it say? Elated that he was being let go, which is crazy because you're like, what happened there? But they've brought back, they trade Pat Connaughton. So I think the only two left are Giannis, and who else was it? It was another, I forget who it was. No, it wasn't Torian Prince, I don't think. They did bring Torian Prince back though, supposedly. It's just this, it's the same team with Myles, and less Pat Connaughton. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the Bucks do, because this was Milwaukee's. This is Milwaukee's last ditch effort to keep Giannis, was Myles Turner. Yeah. So there's that. There is that. There is still hope, because it still seems that Milwaukee, New York tend to not understand how to run an organization very well, outside of that outlier of a year they won an NBA title when the league was still trying to figure out what COVID was. But anyway, not to tarnish the Bucks, but it's a great rivalry. It'll continue to be a great rivalry with Myles Turner there, and all the secrets will go there. I hope at some point Myles unpacks his bag and Tyrese's dad has stuffed a Tyrese Halliburton towel into Myles Turner's things, and he unveils it in the presence of Giannis. But all fun and games. Great rivalry. Solid. What a story, right? What a chapter to add to the Bucks Pacers rivalry and hatred. I will be interested to see how that all goes, because like these are legitimately two teams that do not like each other. And now Myles is headed to Milwaukee. You know what this reminds me of? Has anybody ever seen, if you're out there, obviously I'm talking to some of the people in the live, but I'm also talking to you, the listener. Let me know in the comments. Have you guys ever seen I think it was Mighty Ducks D3? Yeah, D3. Because when they go to the college, the prep school, or no, the high school is the prep school, and JV plays varsity, and Adam Banks is good enough to play for varsity, and they hate each other, and varsity tries to get Adam Banks to hate the Ducks, and the Ducks are the JV team, and the Ducks are like, dude, you're one of us, what are you doing? And then like they do all these hazing, they like freeze their jerseys, and they're like, what about Banksy? And they're like, oh yeah, he's one of them now. So I think it's like that. Like the people that are really good at making the videos, can you put like Myles Turner's head on Adam Banks and the rest, I'm talking, my childhood watching the Mighty Ducks movies, but that's what it feels like. It feels like the biggest betrayal. And I know Myles there, obviously there's probably the thought that goes to Myles' head, like, fine, you don't want me, I'll go over there. It's kind of that, like, and I get it, but honestly, I think it's people that valued Myles Turner, the Pacers in a spot where right now is not the time to go in the luxury. I think that's when Tyrese Halliburton comes back. Then you pick your time. it's a wise move. I think you're not going to contend for the next 2 years for a title, I don't believe. So it's brilliant because in 2 years when they're signing somebody or are able to have some flexibility in their roster, I think we look back at this move. I think that's when you can look back at this move and go, "Huh, well, okay, that makes sense." But I know it'll be 2 rough years, I think, to watch, because I don't think they're obviously as good as they are with Tyrese. So getting Tyrese back to full strength, again, that timeline looks like 2 years. So we'll see how it works out. This, again, move, I just don't think you can look in this vacuum and say, hey, this is a bad move, or hey, why didn't you sign Myles Turner? I really don't think you can really judge this move until you kind of see where the pieces fall. And that's what we will do here on this show. So I want to thank everybody for coming in, watching. Had some pretty good views here, so I appreciate that. Leave in the comments below, what do you think about the moves or lack thereof? What do you think about the future for the Pacers? Did you want them to go in the luxury tax? Why did you want to go the luxury tax if Tyrese Halliburton's not on the roster? You know, they will, I think, and I know the argument's always going to be the Simons don't want to do it, but it really did. All the reportings out there said they were prepared until Tyrese Halliburton's injury in Game 7. So I believe it. I think that it was happening. I think that everything you kind of had read and the vibes, I think that they were ready to run that same team back and maybe make an addition or two. But we'll see. We'll never have known. We'll see what happens, and hopefully it's for the best. I wish Myles Turner the best. I loved watching Myles play for 10 years. What an absolutely incredible human being. I will continue watching him play. I won't root for him, but I will watch him play. I will root that he stays healthy. I will root that he enjoys his time, that he is happy, and that's all that that we should care about. Again, at the end of the day, it's a game. These guys are human, and we've loved having him here. And I hope one day we can bring him back and thank him, truly thank him, not just when he comes back with the Bucks next year, but thank him for everything that he did and the crap that he stuck with, and the teams he had to play on to get through that, because he was through it, man. He was playing with guys that, nice guys, but man, did they not deserve to be on NBA rosters. But yeah, thanks, Myles Turner. We really appreciate you, and we love you, and hope everything works out in Milwaukee, but not too well, because obviously the rivalry. So again, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We are the Pacers Fever Show on YouTube, anywhere you can find your podcast. We will see you next time. And it should be, we're going to take a break here for the holiday weekend, but the next time we record will probably when I return from the holiday break. I'll probably record something on that Sunday, looking at the new era of the Indiana Pacers. I've had to put that episode on pause. I was going to record that yesterday, but it felt real weird yesterday when Turner didn't sign right away. But we'll do an episode. Hopefully I can record something on Sunday, but we'll definitely have something beginning of next week, because they'll be able to talk to Chad and them about, and KP, about what's going on with the Indiana Pacers and what that looks like in the future, and thoughts on Myles Turner. So we will catch you next time on the episode where we are discussing some summer league play and thoughts, more thoughts on Myles Turner and the future of the Indiana Pacers.